I was born on Christmas Eve. So my parents named me Mary. No, not Mary, like the mother of Jesus. Mary. M-E-R-R-Y. They thought that would be appropriate. I spent my life having to be told by teachers to spell my name correctly, when I was, to teach people how to say it, because Mary and Mary sound so much alike, and wondering how it was that my parents thought this was a great idea. I suppose I should cut them some slack. They were bringing a baby into the world on Christmas Eve, and with a big Italian family on one side and a big Polish family on the other side, there were always competing celebrations for them to have. Whether we were supposed to sit down for lasagna, who has lasagna on Christmas Eve? My grandparents. Or it was time to go to the Viglia celebration, my other grandparents. Then you knew how things were going to go. I grew up with parents, one who was an engineer, the other who spent her career as a church secretary. So when I told them that I was going to be a teacher, they about lost their minds. They were really sure I should have followed in one of their footsteps. Needed a couple of extra siblings to do that for me. But instead of that, I became not only a teacher, I became an art teacher. They were so excited. Growing up in Michigan, one of the things that was always important was that you find a job that will be useful and always keep you employed. Evidently, being an art teacher didn't fall into that category as far as my parents were concerned. But it was my joy, and I guess to some extent, my gift. And so I did, as often as I could, get home for our family celebrations to enjoy those. But I ended up, at one point, taking a job way out east at Miller Place Primary School. And that was probably my very favorite place to teach art. The kids were always excited and ready. Our school board supported the arts, which, as everybody knows, is the first thing that gets cut when schools run out of money. And it was just always a positive. I collaborated with my colleagues who taught math. I collaborated with my colleagues who taught English. That gained me a few points with my secretary mom. But it was just always so exciting. One of the things that Miller Place Primary School did every year was that they painted the windows. So these big, enormous, clear windows out front, and the elementary schoolers would come up and they would paint trees in the window. We did it every year without fail. I saw kids from the very small to very tall. I didn't quite get to having their own children, but I saw lots of brothers and sisters over the years who would decorate the windows. I listened to them compare. I listened to them go home or tell me how they went home and said, my tree was better than your tree. But there was one year that I just, I wasn't in the mood. I wasn't in the mood. My mom had died, and my dad, God bless him, had done his very best to pick up and do the things she did. Oh my gosh, the cookies I ate that year were, quite frankly, probably the worst thing that has ever been cooked, ever. But I ate them because it was important to do that. It was part of being together as a family. About that same time, my youngest had moved out. Now, I had all these glorious ideas of what it would look like when a child moved out. I would help you take stuff from our home to your new place. I would help you figure out where the dishes went in the kitchen. My daughter moved out on a weekend when I wasn't around. I left home, and I had a human still living in the same house. I came home to an empty bedroom. that held my childhood bed and some of her favorite toys that were no longer things she wanted to take with her. There is no other way I can describe what this year was like for me, except that it was a blue Christmas. It was a blue Christmas. Now, can you imagine the art teacher trying to paint trees in the middle of her own blue Christmas? Or help the kids? I really didn't do much painting. So we came to tree painting day, and I thought, well, sometimes adequate is enough. So maybe showing up this day will have to be enough. And that was about all I was prepared to do until Brenda came running down the hall. She was this brilliant second grader who was so excited. She had 3 older siblings who had already painted trees, so she was primed. She was ready to do this. And she came running down the hall to her teacher, named Mary, decidedly unmerry, and said, Miss Baker, we can't paint the trees this year. It's awful. And she started sobbing. Brenda, take a breath. But we can't paint the trees. Brenda, what's going on? We have no green paint. All right, we have no green paint. And I thought, doesn't it just figure? Like, I just need 5 minutes to have a timeout on Christmas spirit, and now I got to figure out green paint? You would think this would have been easier for an art teacher. So I said, all right, Brenda, let's think. What do you think we could do? She said, we can't paint the trees. I said, all right, let's walk down to the closet and see what we find. But we can't paint the trees. I said, well, look, we've got this blue paint in the closet. She said, but the trees can't be blue. I thought I'd prefer the trees be blue. That's just kind of, I hear you, Brenda. And we've got this yellow paint in the closet. And she looked at me with brilliant eyes and said, but Miss Baker, yellow and blue make green. So we stirred some up, and she started painting the windows, and her tears ebbed, and she began to have fun. She began to remind me what a poor job her brother had done painting the year before. And the crisis seemed to be averted. And as I watched her, I began to think about my own blue Christmas. Because Christmas isn't just about the presents, and it's not just about the tree or the wreath or the really awful cookies. Christmas is about Christ. Not just Christ, but the light of Christ. And if you mixed my blue Christmas with the yellow light of Christ, you get green. So that year, I learned from Brenda what it was to celebrate the holiday that, had you asked me before being with her, I would have told you wasn't worth my time and effort. I was too tired and I was too sad. But instead, that year, the school had a green Christmas. And so did I. Since then, I've known a variety of Christmases. Some have been more blue and some have been more yellow, and many have fallen in all the other colors of the rainbow. But I find for myself the truth of the green Christmas that year stays with me. and that the light that shines in the darkness and the darkness that has not overcome it sometimes gives me that peace, that hope, that promise that sustains me, whether it's a deeply blue Christmas or a brilliantly yellow one. Friends, I pray that tonight you will know the hope, the promise, and the peace that sustains you in the tiny hand that is held out to you tonight. And may you see God's face reflected in that tiny babe in a manger. Alleluia and amen.